Hello and welcome to the News at 7 here live on fecktv.com. I'm Noel Byrne and joining me this evening is Mr. Chris Bennett. We've got on all the latest on today's top stories from around the world, and we're kicking off with quite an interesting court case that's taking place in Boston at the moment. It involves a Cavan woman by the name of Aisling McCarthy Brady. She's been working as a nanny in Boston for the last number of years, and she's facing murder charges over the death of one-year-old Rima Sabir, who was in her care at the time. Miss McCarthy Brady had called 911 on January 14th to ask for help, and the child, as I said, was in her sole charge. Rima had a broken leg and arm, severe bleeding from the head and eyes when police found the child. She died in hospital a few days later.
Yes, McCarthy Brady is on a bail of $500,000 at the moment. Her defence attorney, however, Melinda Thompson, is pointing the finger of blame potentially at the child's parents. Mentioning trips abroad to both Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, they have suggested that the cause of the injuries may have happened on one of those trips away. The Irish Department of Foreign Affairs has said they are aware of the case and will provide assistance if required.
An interesting aspect of the case that emerged today in particular, and the details of this weren't released last night, is the fact that there are actually 2 restraining orders out against Miss McCarthy Brady, as well as allegations of harassment and assault. So I think for many people looking at this case, their view last night, they might have been a bit more sympathetic towards Miss McCarthy Brady, but this evening I think people might be kind of questioning, what exactly happened that day.
Yeah, I suppose it could go really sort of one of 2 ways as it is, and that one of those 2 ways can split in 2 sections. Either obviously the allegations of the murder would lay the blame at Miss McCarthy Brady's own door, or that something happened whilst the baby was in her care but she was not with it physically at the time, in which case it would be a neglect of care but not murder. Exactly. Or it could potentially go the second way, which would be laying, as her own defence lawyers have said, laying the blame elsewhere, potentially in sort of at the door of the parents.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see, and we'll be following that case with interest here at fecktv.com.
Absolutely. David Cameron has today announced a referendum, or at least a potential one, for the British membership of the European Union. He's proposing an in-out question, but only if the Tories are re-elected in 2015. Mr. Cameron has said that disillusionment with the EU is at an all-time high in the country. However, himself as Prime Minister is very pro-European and would campaign for the UK to stay within the Union. The move has provoked debate in Europe, with those citizens in France and Germany being quite pro-Britain's exit from the European Union, although leaders such as Angela Merkel coming out saying they desire the UK to stay.
Yes, indeed, the beautiful relationship between Britain, Germany and France being highlighted there. As you might guess, there are a lot of critics of the move to have a referendum. Former British Prime Minister Tony Blair has said that David Cameron is playing with fire and warned him that he might not get what he wants out of the referendum. You'd imagine, Chris, this is also a move to keep the Conservative backbenchers happy and to kind of keep them quiet at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a bit of a sop to the backbenchers. It's been coming for some time. It was expected, very much expected from David Cameron to say this at some point. It's now come out. Again, he's put it in as only if the Tories get re-elected in full. So obviously if there's any kind of coalition, or if they're not elected, this won't obviously pass, this won't go through. It's interesting as well that he's come out and quite clearly said that whilst there is this disillusionment, whilst himself as a Tory politician is pushing this forward, he personally will campaign against it. So there is, it's a 2-sided thing. He's saying, here you are backbenchers, I'll give you a little something, but actually, my rule is still there and I'm going to, as Prime Minister, campaign against it.
A couple of points on this story, I suppose. Firstly, the fact that he's kind of holding the nation ransom, in the sense that, hey, you better elect us, and then we'll have this referendum. But also I'm just wondering, do you think as an Englishman, are the Conservatives feeling a bit anxious maybe about the rise of the UK Independent Party or anything, because they would also like a referendum held on this? A lot
has been made in the media about the rise of the UK Independence Party, but I suspect that seasoned Tory campaigners aren't worrying too much about them. if you'll sort of think back to the European Constitution, things like that, the popularity of the UKIP party rises and falls roughly around the time where there's a bit of antagonism towards the EU. It generally then falls away again, and I suspect that this is exactly what's going to happen now. Now that the referendum's been put out, now that the Tories have taken a first step there, I don't see the UK Independence Party's sort of popularity lasting, shall we say.
Okay, we'll have to wait and see how that one unfolds. Moving on and coming back here to Ireland, a survey was the results of a survey from the Community Foundation for Ireland were released today. It's called Vital Signs, and it's kind of an attempt to assess the quality of modern life here in Ireland. 1,000 people were surveyed in September and October of last year, the results of which we're now seeing. And Ireland was overall given a grade of C+. It's on a scale of A to F, which is comparative to Toronto, where the same survey was carried out. And Vancouver, they fared a little better. They got a B.
It's a bit of a must-try harder score.
Yeah, there's definitely room for improvement. Some fascinating results in it. Arts and culture ranked the best here in Ireland. They got a B-. Some of the respondents saying things like Ireland has great festivals, particularly in terms of music, theatre and literature. Education and learning got a C+, and safety as well got a C+. But on the education aspect of it, the top 10 issues people said affected them, 8 out of the 10 were education related. The other 2 were kind of strange. One was the home life for children, but the one that I thought was most peculiar was air safety.
Yeah, a lot of smog around in Ireland at the moment.
You know, Ireland is environmental to a point. You know, we have the recycling and plastic bags. You know, you have to pay that little extra if you want to get them. But I wouldn't have seen air safety as something that people would be worried about. But I mean, these type of surveys always throw up things like this.
They always throw up another one. The one thing I suppose that's been made of this story in the media is how far down I suppose the presence of religion is in it.
Yeah, that's a strange one. Spirituality and religion ranked 119 on the list of issues, but that was out of 119.
Dead last,
so,
then.
I mean, I wasn't surprised at the fact that it wasn't in the top 10. I mean, it's modern Ireland. We've got one of the fastest growing rates of atheism here. But at the same time, I wasn't expecting it to rank like the very last thing. I mean, Ireland at the same time is still quite a Catholic country, or at least people claim to be Catholic. They may not practice it. But this survey, I suppose, in some ways highlights the fact that, you know, we're not as religious as, you know, some people might think.
Although maybe you are, and you just don't have any problems with it.
That is true. Looking at a couple of other aspects of this survey in terms of what else didn't fare out too well on our report card, which is, you know, all on FeckTV.com if you want to check it out. Work, equality and financial got a C-, housing got a C-, and health and well-being got a C- as well.
So they're essentially the ones that you could kind of expect there, what with the budget just coming out and things like, you know, the property tax, all of that will be influencing those kind of areas.
I think, you know, with the recession the way it is in Ireland and the knock-on effect it's had for people, people's lives, the C- for financial was always going to, you know, I'm surprised it wasn't lower really, because a lot of people are under a lot of stress at the moment with, as you said, the way the budget has gone and whatnot. Health and well-being, I suppose, based on your financial situation, it can have a knock-on effect there in terms of, you know, where you got money spare to go.
Yeah, so once again, we'll say it, must try harder for next time. We're going to move on to a story coming out of Iraq now. 22 people have been killed in a suicide bomb attack at a funeral. The bomber disguised himself in a suit and mingled with mourners at a mosque in northern Iraq before detonating the device. 50 more were injured in the attack. The funeral itself was of a Shiite and has fueled fears of sectarian violence erupting again in the country. This being the 4th bombing in a week, as 17 were killed on Tuesday in an attack on a marketplace. There are worries now that this will fuel a potential civil war and see a return to the violence, the sectarian violence of 2006-2007.
Certainly worrying times for that part of the world. You know, there'd be a lot of fears in Iraq, I suppose, that since the war in neighbouring Siberia, Syria even, Siberia? Yeah. In neighbouring Syria is ongoing, and there's a lot of Sunni rebels taking part in that as well, trying to topple Bashir al-Assad. You know, and he's a Shiite Iran ally. So I suppose, you know, as you said, the civil war, it could be just, you know, on the edge there.
Yeah, there is a sort of a destabilisation of the region itself as a whole. The problem, I suppose, comes that you have several governments, you know, Assad's being one of them, which are run by a Shiite-run government, but they're a minority in a Sunni-majority country. A lot of the bombings in Iraq haven't been claimed by any terrorist group, but they have been suggested that they may come from the Sunni side of things. It's certainly one to watch, and as I say, it's worrying that this is the fourth bombing in essentially less than a week, with a large number of people being killed here. The hope is that the spread from Syria won't then go back into Iraq, but it's interesting that obviously now the pullout of troops from Iraq several years ago has left a sort of vacuum there, which is now being filled again by the sectarian violence that we saw a number of years ago. It's a worrying situation.
It definitely is, and I was just about to mention, I suppose, governments like in the US and Britain looking on and watching this unfolding. You know, I wonder, are they second questioning pulling out troops? I mean, the country appears to be imploding.
They might be questioning it, but I don't think we'll ever see them back in again. No. Our final story of the day is a case coming out of Australia. Yes, Gary the goat has had his fine for vandalism quashed by magistrates.
That isn't a nickname of anyone, that is
no,
an actual
he's not some biker or something. No, it really is a goat. Yes, Gary was under charges for alleged vandalism after he ate a flower bed at the Sydney Museum of Contemporary Art. Police saw the incident and fined the goat $440 Australian. His owner, James Desarnos, a comedian also known as Jimbo Bazumi, took the case to court. Now, it was an interesting one, Noel.
Yeah, first of all, you know, you'd have to say that was a bad idea by the goat.
That's a sheep, frankly.
I suppose similar family. I mean, give me credit for that.
I'm sorry, I kid. But there was no. The court went to the case went to court, and they basically proved that there was no evidence of intent. Was one of the reasons why they got it off. Now, the defence lawyer for Gary the goat, Paul McGeer, said, "We can't guess what he might have whispered in his goat's ear." And this is alluding to Jimbo potentially telling the goat to go off and eat the flower bed. He said, "Can't prove it." They also said that the wrong infringement notice was given to Gary due to the fact that the police fined him as a human and not a goat.
Did the police witness Jimbo whispering to the goat? As in, why were they alluding to that fact?
Not particularly sure, no. There is no proof of this. The magistrate, Carolyn Barkell, basically came on and agreed with everything the defence lawyer was saying. She finally said that whilst the allegations that he did eat the flower bed were true, he may have also preferred ice cream, was her judgment there. So no intent. An
interesting one there. I mean,
only in Australia.
Was the goat at the court case? I mean, was he, via video link or anything?
No, the goat was spared the ignominy of being in court and stood outside, probably demolishing their flower beds.
Probably. Okay.
Yeah, only in Australia.
Only in Australia could something like that happen. That is it for tonight. Thanks for watching the news at 7 here on FeckTV.com.